Hello guys, nice to see you here. I'm just gonna make a short introduction to this room. Faisal and I were recording a podcast a few minutes ago, and we thought, why not just bring this conversation to Clubhouse as well and see what you guys think of it. The topic today is how the Millennials can save the field of architecture and innovate the field. And with Faisal today, we wanted to discuss this topic, and it's going to be recorded and then put on the IBD Hub podcast. And for now, we would like to keep Faisal and I on the stage, and then at the end take questions, if that's okay with you guys. I know that usually we make everyone participate at the same time, but it would be great if we could have Faisal's input on this subject and then take questions a little bit later on. Faisal, are you up? Are you still pinging people?
Yes. Thank you for doing this, Giulia.
No problem. As I said, I really love your input and out of the box thinking in terms of the architecture field. So I thought it was important to have this conversation with you. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit to the audience and tell us a little bit more what you've been up to in terms of innovation and architecture?
Yes, absolutely. Again, thank you for doing this. I really like the initiative of sort of business for architects, and I'm really happy to be having this conversation. So I see a couple of familiar faces in the audience, but I'll give a quick introduction of who I am and what I do. So my name is Faisal U-K. I'm from Nigeria. I'm currently based in Dubai, and I'm sort of engaged in architecture in sort of different ways. So I'm a fellow podcaster as well. I have a podcast called AOA Talks, where I sort of interview leading figures within architecture and design. And we do that on Instagram Live, and then we have also an audio podcast that we stream on different DSPs as well. I'm also the creative director of a media platform called ARC, where we kind of engage with the frontiers and the avant-garde sector of architecture in different ways, with students, with kind of creating web series, with things like competitions and workshops as well. And we partner with different platforms and different companies on that. I'm also the co-founder of a virtual reality platform called ILLUSORR, which is building the first design-oriented metaverse. And I'm really excited about that, and hopefully we can speak about that in a bit more depth in a minute. I'm also the co-founder of the MAD Collective, and that's basically a group of content creators that got together to kind of to share ideas and to create content for students in architecture and also young architects in general. MAD actually stands for Millennials in Architecture and Design. So that's why I'm kind of really excited to be having this conversation, because I've been interested in the idea of millennials within architecture and how we can kind of impact or improve the future of architects and architecture in general. And I'm also a student currently finishing on my postgrad in advanced architecture. So I can also sort of empathize with other students out there that are millennials and sort of the next generation of architects. But yeah, I'm really sort of excited to be having this discussion, and really excited to delve into the frontiers of architecture and what is next for the discipline and for the young generation as well.
Thank you so much for this amazing introduction and kind of explaining us your background. I'm just shortly gonna introduce myself as well so that people can understand a little bit my perspective. I'm Giulia de Mauro. I'm the founder of the IBD Hub and the IBD Company. The IBD Hub is a company that helps architects to start their business and that helps also architecture practices to scale up and get more clients and more engagement offline and online. And the IBD company is essentially a consultancy that helps architects and engineer firms to expand internationally and find projects abroad. So I'm also an architect. I have studied in the UK. And then I've been, since I started my career, involved in the business side of the architectural field. So how architects should market themselves, how should they find clients, and how should they innovate to beat the competition. And from my perspective, what I've seen is that the field is extremely old-fashioned, not only in the business sense, but also in the design sense. So it seems like a lot of international companies. I've worked for MVRDV, if anybody knows it, and a couple of other companies that are more local. And it seems like in terms of design, in terms of services, everyone is doing the same things over and over again throughout the years and not really questioning themselves as to how you can innovate in the architecture field. And yeah, I was wondering, Faisal, what was your experience of the architecture field and where do you see it going wrong as well?
Thank you for that, Giulia. So I have a very interesting sort of experience with architecture. I've been to sort of architecture schools that are more traditional, and also architecture schools that are more sort of focused on the frontiers of the discipline. And seeing that really it curated a new understanding of architecture that I have, and I've kind of theorized this problem of architecture today, right? And I think there's two main problems when it comes to architecture, and that is an internal bifurcation and an external bifurcation. By internal bifurcation, what I mean is that the discipline has become fragmented into the mainstream architecture and the sort of avant-garde architecture, where it's the avant-garde are doing things like procedural modeling, generative designs, parametric design, object-oriented ontology, and all these different sort of approaches to architecture, while the mainstream is sort of focused on things like modernism or minimalism or postmodernism. And it's almost become like two completely different fields of architecture. And I feel like that's a major problem within the field. And when you compare it to sort of other great paradigms or great epochs of architecture, you see that a lot of times they had sort of a convergence, a common goal that they were all kind of trying to get towards. For example, the modernist era, where all the great architects from sort of Mies van der Rohe, Walter Gropius, Le Corbusier, Frank Lloyd Wright, and the others were all sort of geared or going towards the same goal of architecture. And today we don't have that. We have a very fragmented discipline. And I feel like that's a major problem for architecture. And with external bifurcation, what I mean is that we don't engage with the general public as a discipline. And that's caused a lot of different problems. And a sort of fun example I like to use is Joe Rogan, who's my favorite podcaster. And he's had thousands and thousands of guests on his show. Everyone from biologists to philosophers to rocket scientists to comedians and martial artists and everyone in between, right? But he's never had a single architect on the show, which for me is a major problem, right? Because I guess everyone wants to hear from every discipline out there except for architects. And I think that is our fault as architects. We don't sort of try to engage with the general public. And I think we should be sort of trying to educate the public and sort of simplify what we do and sort of teach the public that. And even things like sort of writing popular books for for the general public. For example, biologists write many popular books where they simplify very complex concepts into very understandable language for the general public. And all other fields also do this. Physics does this, or physicists do this as well. Mathematicians do this, and a lot of different disciplines kind of have this agenda of sort of simplifying the discipline for the general public. I feel like in architecture we don't try as much to do that, and we could even do things like engage in movie set design. For example, the Black Panther movie that was released a couple of years ago. The Wakanda design could have been done by architects. I could see someone like Zaha easily designing Wakanda for the movie, but unfortunately it's not done by architects, and others sort of take the lead in that. And so that's really what I'm interested in, sort of architects being engaged with the general public in a way that educates them and sort of connects us back with them, because at the end of the day we're not designing for ourselves, we're actually designing for the general public. So it'd be good to kind of connect with them in that way. But yeah, so those are the two main things. There's obviously a lot of problems with architecture, but I feel like those are two fundamental problems that would really help the discipline or the future of the discipline.
I completely agree with you, and again, I see two big origins of the problem. Number one, in terms of internal communication problems, one of the reasons why this is happening is also that the architecture field has been seen more as an institution. So people don't tend to be curious about other disciplines because we are an institution that is looking inwards. So we have the hardest time to, be curious about other fields and implement ideas coming from other fields, because we have some kind of a status that has been there for years, and therefore we are proud of our status, and we are a little bit reticent to see what's out there. Like you said, other services or other jobs could be created, like the filmmaking set and so on. The second point is also the origin is that in architecture university, since year one, you pitch your projects to other architects as opposed to people that are not from the field and clients. So one of the biggest challenges that I have with my clients is to make them pitch their company in a very simple way so that clients can understand what the company is about. And they find that super hard. So I make them pitch to their children, and I make them pitch to people that have no idea what they're talking about. And they find it so hard to explain what their architecture or design is about. So those 2 points kind of, are at the origin of what you just said, Faisal, in terms of the issues of the field in a more general way, is that we have been kind of put in a box, and now it's very hard to come out of it, right? But I'm a little bit curious about the solutions that you found to break this pattern and to think outside of the box.
So there's different sort of solutions that I've been thinking about, but before I get to that, I just wanted to say I love your approach to making sort of architects explain their businesses to sort of to clients and people outside of the discipline. It reminds me of my favorite quote by Albert Einstein, who said, "If you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself." Right?
Exactly, and it's so true.
Exactly. I love that. So yeah, in terms of sort of solutions, so the internal bifurcation, I think a major part of it comes from developers and contractors who kind of dictate the state of architecture, or at least the current state of architecture. There's a popular sort of the popular figures that sort of say, whether it's 95% of buildings are not built by architects or 96%, whatever the figure is. I think a lot of architecture, a lot of buildings that we see in the world today aren't designed by architects, and that is why, because developers and contractors kind of they dictate how the discipline is run. They dictate the funding of the funding of architecture, the style in which architecture is built, where it's built, when it's built, and everything around it. And I think that is perhaps having an impact on the discipline and its ability to kind of advance into new frontiers. And perhaps what we can start to do is find other ways to fund projects, because I guess that's the main hold that developers have on architecture, the sort of funding. So if we can find new ways to fund projects that doesn't rely solely on developers, that could be a major contribution to a sort of beginning to merge the frontiers with the mainstream architecture. And I'm actually interested in one of the solutions, which is related to ILLUSORR, which maybe we can get to later, and I can kind of explain in a little bit more depth later on. But I think that's one thing, sort of finding new ways to fund projects so that we don't solely rely on developers to do that. In terms of the sort of external bifurcation, I think it's just a matter of, once we deal with the internal bifurcation and we're all sort of reaching towards a common goal, at least a similar goal, we kind of agree what architecture is and where it should be headed. I think it would be easier to kind of begin to communicate this to the general public in a way that they would sort of understand and love to engage with. Because what I found is, I like to do this experiment a lot, right? I love to talk to non-architects about architecture and just ask them questions. And firstly, what they think we do is not actually what we do. And what they think architecture is like a very outdated version of architecture, especially the kind of architecture I'm sort of interested in, right? And when I start to show them new approaches of architecture, whether it's sort of parametric design or using algorithms to generate forms, or even sort of embedding AI and machine learning into the process, or all these different new approaches and technologies that we have, people are usually like boggled. They usually, they're amazed by that, and they could never imagine that architecture was engaged in things like that. So I think it'd be interesting to begin to educate people on the new frontiers of architecture, get them interested, get them excited, and get them on board with the vision of the future of what architecture could be. I think that'll really help, because that's what other fields do, right? When I read popular physics books, they talk about the future of physics and where it could be leading, and the different technologies that could come out of it, and the different theories that we can begin to find out about. So I think it's good to kind of give people hope about the future of architecture in that way, and also go on different podcasts, go on different shows, engage with movie creation, game creation, any kind of different field about creativity and design, because at the end of the day, we have a special toolkit, a special approach to understanding things that we've kind of gone through 7 years to understand. So we can apply that to many different areas in that way. So yeah, I think those are important. Sort of finding new funding for our projects, and also engaging with the general public in as many different forms as possible.
I completely agree with you, and I just would like to add something, because the struggle that I see from my clientele is that you have some extremely talented architects that are now working with AI, computational design, all kind of new tools, but there is some kind of struggle there, because usually people that are that far into innovation are very much specialized in it and have the hardest time to communicate it in a very simple way, or to even make it a business case. Just simply because we didn't acquire business or marketing skills during our architecture university, I find that all these individuals have great ideas and have so much potential, but they are not ready yet to know how to structure that into a business and promote it as a business, and have the ideas to get out of their ways to talk about it with people from the different fields. So it's that's also why my initiative started with the IBD Hub. It's about really lifting people up and that have great ideas about innovation and architecture, and give them the tools to actually create a business and monetize a business and sell these services to a clientele that understands what we're talking about. Because by doing architecture the way that we did since the beginning, the market is a little bit saturated. Like, clients start to not know exactly, okay, which architect should I hire, because they all seem the same, like they all have the same services. So people that have innovation in mind and new tools in mind are key to changing the whole field, and it's very important that they come forward to be curious about how to monetize this and how to make it an actual solid business, because we need it. There is the demand from the clients, but there is this, gap between someone that's specializes in this and then the business world. I don't know if Faisal, you agree with me, or if you had a similar experience, but sometimes it's hard for them to come out of their shell and present their ideas.
Yeah, absolutely, Giulia. I definitely agree with you. As creatives, as designers, and people with maybe an artistic mind, it's very hard to kind of begin to structure that or even ground it in a way that becomes business ready or sort of market ready in that way, and to communicate it as such as well. It's very hard to do because on one hand you're kind of trying to experiment and be creative and come out with ideas that haven't been thought about before, and sort of really venture into new frontiers. And on the other hand, you have to be sort of pragmatic and have to learn how to ground it in a way that will sort of be viable in the market and the way you can communicate. So it's very hard to do, which is why I love your initiative. I love what you're doing to help architects do that. And I think it's definitely something that's going to become necessary in the future of the discipline. I've spoken to you about this, Giulia, about how what you're doing is definitely going to become even embedded within architecture schools. We're going to have to learn how to be a business ready as architects, and I love that you're kind of leading in this field. It's definitely necessary for the future of the discipline.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Unfortunately, the university side, or the academic side, as I should say, is a little bit slower in wanting to change things, as it comes back from the institution of architects. Since it's very old-fashioned and very much embedded, it kind of has... I struggle to help universities and students because changing programs and changing way of teaching architecture is very difficult in the academic world. So that's why we're taking it more into a professional ground, let's say. The other thing that is interesting to me is trying to reinvent your career. So if you don't want to create a whole business from scratch, if you want to create your own job and think a little bit out of the box. So I know that many people, especially during COVID right now, have lost their job and are applying for other architecture positions. There's a lot of graduates as well that have just finished university and that are struggling to find their first job and so on. But I think that, and Faisal, correct me if I'm wrong, but there is an opportunity there to think a little bit outside of the box and maybe applying to jobs that you wouldn't normally apply to as an architect. And Faisal, probably you have more a visual of what these opportunities could be. You mentioned the film set making. But tell us a little bit more about also your experience in thinking outside of the box in terms of the role of the architect and what opportunities that can bring.
Yeah, absolutely. I think again, we're kind of taught this special skill set or this toolkit or this approach to understanding the world, which can be applied in many different ways. Of course, the main goal is to kind of teach us how to be a traditional architect, a designer of buildings. But this same approach that we learn can be applied to many different disciplines, many different fields. And now I think it's becoming more and more evident as you said, sort of the pandemic has influenced or impacted people in a way that they have to find jobs outside of the traditional industry. And I sort of working in the avant-garde field of architecture, a lot of people venture out to many different areas, whether it's sort of designing in fashion. For example, one of the leading fashion designers today is Virgil Abloh, the head of Louis Vuitton men's fashion, and he actually studied architecture as well. And you can kind of see it within his design approach. He has a very deconstructivist method of approaching design, which is a very sort of an architectural approach, right? And you have many different designers who are also architects. You have my friend Michael Pryor, who's a computational designer who's working at Nike right now, and he's bringing algorithmic designs and different sort of parametric methods into designing athletes' shoes, which is also an interesting way to sort of apply architecture. And you have people in product design and sort of doing installations, and just many different ways that you can apply this special toolkit that we have. And personally, also, I'm sort of venturing into the virtual reality world because of the same reason. I think as architects, we should be sort of trying to lead any field that is involved with spatial design or designing of social functions. And just before I get to that, actually, I wanted to touch on an interesting point that I've been talking about lately to do with algorithms and the sort of impact that algorithms have on us. And this is another thing that architects could be involved in. So, I've been sort of looking into aesthetic conditioning and how and why we incline to certain aesthetics, right? And if you look at something like Instagram, the algorithms almost, dictate the sort of aesthetic or design language that we incline towards, right? Because we see something enough times a day and every day for months at a time, we're going to be inclined towards it sooner or later, and then we're going to start to design like that inclination. And that has an effect on us as architects, it has an effect on the design methodology we use, and everything in between as well. And those aren't controlled by architects. The algorithms are designed by, whether it's sort of tech specialists or software developers at Instagram or Facebook, and they have two goals in mind. It's engagement and retention, right? As opposed to sort of an architectural goal in mind. And, I then began to ask the question, if us architects were in charge of those algorithms, if we could sort of influence the design of those algorithms, what would it be? How would we sort of change the algorithms to benefit architecture in a way that would improve the built environment? And these are the kind of questions I think could begin to be answered as we venture out of the traditional architectural role, right? To sort of influence algorithms and how they impact the discipline.
It's really interesting what you say. It just reminds me. I'm just gonna give you this story. I'm currently working with an architect based in Switzerland that works with computational design, and is able to generate different design options according to data points. And we are now working together with Surhand, which is a real estate developer in New York. And basically the goal here is to, because Surhand has the ability to know what the market requires. So what sells best and what does the user want. And we're able to implement these data points straight from the start of the design. And that's also why the developer doesn't become anymore the person to restrain the architect, but it becomes a co-creation to do together hand in hand in order to come up with a building that is appreciated more by the users, and that will in the end sell much faster and better than if the architect did the design on its own and then if it was sold later on as a real estate entity. So that's also, a new way of collaborating as well, that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, as in, creating a completely different type of service, but you can think also about different types of collaboration, and bringing in different experts from different backgrounds to come up with designs that will make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of the parametric semiology project of Patrick Schumacher, which is trying to do a very similar thing. Using sort of agent-based crowd models to generate forms and analyze forms and analyze spaces. I do agree with you there. I think with the sort of big data that we're beginning to gather as a civilization, I think those can be used to influence or sort of impacts the way that we design from a very early stage. And I do agree that it's a collaborative process, both in the way that humans are now not the sole designer of buildings, but we collaborate with the computer to sort of to co-author buildings, but at the same time also collaborating with different disciplines to sort of generate buildings. And I think we're speaking about sort of the future of architecture or what the architect is going to be in future. I think we're going back to the sort of pre-Renaissance model of architecture, right? Because what happened during the Renaissance is that the architect became separate from the builder, right? Because the term architect comes from architekton, which is master builder or chief builder, and from the very earliest time until the Renaissance, this master builder, was in charge of the whole process of building, from sort of the concept to the design to the actual fabrication to the construction. Everything was under the realm of the architect. But then during the Renaissance, there was this kind of a separation from the designer and the builder that happened. And then that created this new discipline that we now know as the architect, who is just in charge of designing and not actually building. And what we're seeing as, in the 21st century is that this is coming full circle, and we're seeing more architects venture into things like fabrication and construction and all these different parts of the workflow of building. And I do agree that we are becoming a different type of architect, more of a generalist, as you said earlier. And this generalist is going to be sort of, I guess, in charge of curating the whole process, and will have to work with many different disciplines, whether it's sort of AI developers or it's fabrication, robotics experts, or sort of even sociologists that really understand human interaction, or anything in between there. We're going to have to become sort of generalists and curators of all these different disciplines to create spaces for social interaction. So I definitely agree with you there.
Yeah, but unfortunately, what is happening is that at university and during professional career, people tend to want to specialize you. So when you're working in a company, somehow they're trying to put you in a box and make you do that specific task. So what is happening is that many graduates especially feel very frustrated, because during university they kind of, okay, you're kind of a generalist, you have to present a project overall, and then when you're in a practice they make you a BIM manager, or like they make you the person that is good with concepts, or if you're good at competition they make you do competition work. And we kind of lose sight of being an architect and being a generalist and leading teams and overlooking the overall project. So that's also something that I really encourage our young generation to do, is ask for experience in the things that you're interested in, as opposed to wanting to specialize in a specific category. I've changed company 3 or 4 times before I started my own. And all my experiences were related to what I was interested in. So I asked to be put on certain projects, and I asked to be responsible for certain tasks because that interested me more, and that then brought me to be the person that I am today, and be able to think outside of the box. My first job as an architect at NVRDV, they put me as BIM coordinator, so I was coordinating BIM modeling and so on. But the part that I learned is coordination, and from that then I went on to talking with the client and pitching the project to the client, and from that I went from pitching to understand how to find new clients and so on. So really, my advice to millennials in general is ask and require to be put on the things that are interesting to you, as opposed to wanting to fit a box, a specific box, because that's really being within the system, and then it's extremely hard to get out of it and be an innovator and be a person that then will build something much bigger than what there is now. So that's really my advice to you from my point.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I actually did that as well with sort of every work experience that we've had. What I did was I used to print out the plan of work, the RIBA plan of work, which has a sort of different sections of the building process, from concept to detailed design, technical design, construction, and everything. So I print that out and I take it to my supervisor, and I actually tell them, like, I want to gain experience in all of these different sectors, and just kind of sort of detail my work schedule based on that. So I kind of gave this advice to friends of mine as well, doing sort of internships or work experience, to have that conversation with their supervisor and tell them that they want to sort of experience all these different stages of the workflow. I think that's really, really important. And to go back to the earlier point as well, I do agree with you, Giulia, that school is kind of pigeonholing us in a way. And what I predict will probably happen in the future is that there's going to be two different disciplines created. So there's going to be the architect, who is the generalist, and then there's going to be a sort of architectural specialist, which is, whether it's sort of a BIM specialist, a computational specialist, a facade specialist, or whatever kind of niche specialist it is. It's going to become almost two separate disciplines, where you're either a generalist, who is the architect, or you're a sort of specialist who focuses on different niches within the discipline. And depending on what you incline towards, different people sort of like to do different things, right? So if you would like to just focus on BIM and you really love computational design and that area of things, then you can focus on becoming a specialist. Or if you want to become an architect who's in charge of the whole process and curating everything, then you can go down that route as well. And I feel like this is probably going to become the future of the discipline, and sort of the academia part of the discipline as well.
Yeah, you're completely right.
I agree with that.
Yeah, you're right. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about ILLUSORR, and then we'll take a couple of questions?
Yes, sure. So ILLUSORR is interesting, right? So I'll just give a quick history of how it started. It was started by my friend Sarah, who kind of brought us together at the start of the pandemic, and this was in, I think, early April last year. She kind of brought a bunch of her friends who are sort of in the architecture space, a couple of architects, a couple of sort of people with media platforms, all within sort of avant-garde architecture. We had these Zoom meetings, and by maybe the third or fourth meeting, we started sort of finding a similar interest in designing or sort of creating experiences that people could have virtually. So kind of trying to tackle this problem of the lockdown or the pandemic, where everyone was kind of locked away at home, and everyone was frustrated by that. We wanted to create experiences that could kind of allow people to escape. And through this, eventually what we ended up creating was, it became a sort of a virtual platform, a virtual reality platform that could allow people to do this. And eventually that became ILLUSORR, which then launched in December 11th, 12th, and 13th. And during our launch event, we kind of had different activities where people were able to do. We had fashion designers kind of exhibit their designs through fashion shows. We had digital installations. We had exhibitions. We even had concerts where DJs kind of had played their tracks and kind of DJ for people that were dancing with avatars. We had talk shows, which are like panel discussions and interviews in the virtual world as well. So we had all these different experiences to kind of showcase the potential of virtual reality platforms. And then that is now sort of transitioning into building a metaverse, which will be an even bigger ambition, I guess, of transitioning physical reality into a virtual world, where pretty much every experience you can imagine that could happen in the physical world is going to be available through virtual reality. It's going to be available as a virtual experience, as a simulation of reality. And that's what we're working on right now. And I'm super excited about this vision, because as we've been speaking about today, I feel like architects need to branch out, need to venture into different fields that would then improve society. And the thing is, when it comes to things like virtual reality or virtual platforms in general, they're not designed by architects. Even though they are spaces where we perform social functions, architects aren't involved in that process. And I often quote my favorite architect, Patrick Schumacher, who says, the core competency of architecture is designing social functions, right, or organizing social functions. And even on Clubhouse here, we're having a social function. On Instagram, we have social functions. On virtual reality platforms, we have social functions. But none of these are designed by architects. And I feel like architects should be involved in these different designs because we understand social functions, we understand how to design spaces for them, and how to sort of curate them in a way. So that's why I'm sort of really interested in architects leading that within virtual reality, because this isn't just a sort of a 2D page like on social media. This is actually a space, a virtual space that people are creating. But at the moment, they're created by sort of tech specialists or software engineers. And it's important for architects to sort of play a role in that as well, because it's important for us to design these spaces, whether they're physical or virtual. And so, yeah, that's what we're doing at ILLUSORR right now. And we're kind of working with different clients, working with different specialists to kind of bring this vision to fruition in the next couple of months and, in the next couple of years as well.
I love it. Thank you so much for, giving us your input and really explaining what you're up to in order to find new solutions. I love your initiative and also your out of the box thinking process. And I think there is so much potential in what you're doing. So well done for that. I was wondering if anybody in the audience wanted to ask a question and come up on stage. We would love to have your input on the topic and what we discussed as well.
Good evening, guys.
Hello.
Yeah, really, really good conversation. Hi, Faisal. I just had a question for you, Giulia, because obviously I'm aware that you coach and mentor architects on kind of business side of things, and I was just wondering what are the tips that you find yourself giving to most of the time?
Right, so the first step usually is to really understand what your purpose is when you start a company. So what drives you as a business owner and an architect? What problem are you trying to solve for the client, and how are you personally going to go about it in order to solve it? And this process is probably the hardest one to do because it takes a lot of thinking process to do, and you have to think about your own values and what you truly believe in order to pinpoint the problem that you're going to solve. So that's the first step into starting your business and really understand how you can make a difference. From this concept, you will be really able to make a difference from your competitions, and then you will have to start to be strategic on how to communicate the concept of your company. So this comes with narrowing down exactly who your clientele is and really pinpoint what the pain points of your clients are, and communicate solutions towards that. So personally, I use a lot LinkedIn to approach clients for the architecture field because it is a much more professional platform than maybe Instagram or Facebook. And I encourage people, architects, to make posts about problems that your client has encountered and how you went about it to solve it. It can be an article, it can be the picture of one of your references explaining how you solved the design. But always position yourself as an expert and communicate your values and what you're trying to portray with your company. And that usually outcomes to people contacting you and want to either collaborate if it's an engineering firm or a developer, or you can have directly clients from this. So the more you're visible online, especially at the moment, usually we have a lot of networking event and so on, but now these tools are not possible anymore. So being visible online and position yourself as an architect that solves a specific problem is always the way to get project. I hope I am answering your question, Randy.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And I agree with you. I think that's probably the hardest part, trying to figure out what the purpose is and what the overall, what you kind of specifically want to achieve. Because I think it's very easy to kind of be overwhelmed, by the, the very kind of many problems and issues that as an architect you feel like you could or should address. But I think it makes sense, to be really intentional about what exactly it is that you want to contribute to, or you want to solve, and who exactly you want to offer that solution to.
Yeah, and I don't mean that as like a type of building. Like, don't get me wrong. Yeah. I'm not. No, I think that people that portray their architecture firm as the expert in hospitals or the expert in real estate. That's not it. You need to ask yourself, okay, what are my values? What can I bring onto the table that is different through my design? Whether it's that you believe in sustainability or in materiality, in better livable spaces, or even the use of AI to have a better fitted building. It has to come from you, and it's quite tough because you have to put into question a lot of things from your experience and really pinpoint something that is so close to you that then it doesn't really matter which typologies you're gonna design, but they will take you because you're the best at doing that, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. Thank you. And I also had another question. This will probably depend on your experience, but have you perhaps maybe coached or had people kind of pitch to you some kind of very innovative architecture startup ideas? And if you have, what are the things that you think that are easy to get wrong if you are trying to set up a business model that might not necessarily have a precedent?
Well, I can tell you that, for instance, my company was difficult to set up as well because there was no one that was doing what I was doing. So pitching it was definitely a struggle because you have to find the right keywords that resonate with the clientele, and you really need to kind of share the vision of your vision with the clients, and that's the only way to go about it. When you pitch for and your company is something out of the normal, let's say, instead of pitching by explaining which software I'm gonna use and this is the computer that I'm gonna use and the data points people can get overwhelmed by this discussion. So the pitching is really about explaining your vision of things and how this vision can help the client to solve his problem, and that's extremely important. And my advice for any startup, especially in the innovation field, is to keep it lean, to test out some different services. Maybe the first business model and the first services that you are offering it can be that no one buys it because they don't see the value in it. So then you have to kind of, exercise yourself to pitch and adjust a little bit your services accordingly, right? It took me 3 business plans in order to get where I am at now, just simply because the services that I was offering at first were not services that clients wanted in the first place. So it took a lot of conversation and a lot of understanding to get to the place where now I can frame a little bit what does the client want and how can I solve his problem. So don't hesitate to pitch to as many people as possible. Within this room, within this club, we're gonna do some pitching for architecture practices so that people can exercise their pitch and get some insight. So Randy, if you want to participate to that, just drop me a message on Instagram as well. I would be more than happy to have your pitch and to tell you a little bit my input, if that helps.
Yeah, for sure. That sounds really exciting. Yeah, thank you. And I think it's really good to, get the insights and advice, from someone who's someone who really understands, the power of business strategy. Because I think, as you guys touched on before, it's not necessarily something that we are taught in education, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So I do think it's something that if you want to kind of cover a particular path for yourself within the industry, I think it's something that you just have to take into your own hands and educate yourself on and speak to people about. So it's definitely good, to kind of have you here on Clubhouse and to have the opportunity to to have these conversations with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Yeah.
Sorry, Giulia. Just on that question, I just wanted to add another question to that, if you don't mind. So would you differentiate the way that you pitch to investors to the way you pitch to clients? And also, what advice would you give for sort of 30-second pitch, sort of the elevator pitch, to kind of make it concise for people to understand? What is sort of main advice that you'd give to startups for that?
So I would say that the investor pitch is not so different from a client's pitch. Of course, it depends on the service that you are providing, right? But for instance, for an investor, you really need to highlight what will be the financial benefits and the market opportunities of having them to participate. So I do have a structure for pitching for investors. So if anybody is interested, please DM me so I can send it to you. But basically, it is structured by putting forward what the problem of the client really is and explain how you can solve it and what is the market value to solve it. And for normal clients, it's not so different, because at the end of the day, any client that wants to work with you wants to know also the financial outcome. Because I know, like architects, we always, think holistically, but at the end of the day, it is business. So you have to provide a little bit an input. So if it's a developer, for instance, a real estate developer, he wants to know how we can maximize the meter squares and tailor the apartments to the demands of the market, and how much benefit he will get from his investment in the building. So it's not so different from an investor who wants to chip into your startup, right? It's very much similar. But the elevator pitch structure I can send it to you. It's the structure that Google uses and Apple uses and Airbnb has used. It's all the same. You can even Google it. It's very simple, but it takes you through different steps of highlighting the problem. What are the solutions for the problem? What is the market like, and how you can make a difference compared to the market. And you wrap that around your experience and how your company is supposed to grow and so on. So it's a bit technical to explain that right now, but if anyone is interested, please DM me and I will send it to you without any issues.
Awesome, thank you, Giulia.
No problem.
Sorry, just
Sure.
quickly on that. Would an investor be more interested in scalability, do you think?
It depends. You can still be a small business, but gain more projects and have a bigger turnover. It doesn't necessarily, they're interested in knowing does their investment look like 5 years or 10 years down the line. Whether you grow in terms of types of projects, or whether you grow as a company in terms of how many projects you get, that will depend on what they are looking for in a company that they're investing in. But I think that you need to create excitement. You need to create an assessment of the risks that they're taking, and also making them feel reassured that you're the right party to do this with. And this is the combination of elements that will create then the urgency for them to invest and to want to be part of this.
I'd like to contribute to that answer, please.
Sure.
Thanks. I'm Alejandra. I have a startup, so I have raised money from investors. And startup is different from architecture, but I'm pretty sure they have this common thing, that is they really, really care about the team. So you have to gather the people that will convince them that you will make that idea real.
Yeah, indeed, you're completely right. So how did you go about it, Alejandra, in a more personal way? What was your journey like?
Okay. Well, my startup is actually from real estate, a real estate platform, and I have pitched many people, like 100, maybe 200 people, and. Well, my advice to people who wants to raise money is to accept that you are going to everyone is going to say no to you, but the way that you are going to make them say yes is by following them. It's like when you are doing marketing to your clients, so you just don't talked about your product just once, but 1 month after you follow them, you told them like, hey, I have made this improvement, or I have made this research, so my market is actually bigger, or yeah, I got another person on my team, and this is his background. So 1 month after month and after month. And when the investor start seeing that you are making improvements, that you are actually making this thing real, is when they are going to invest. But at the beginning, they will say no to you a lot. And maybe, when I raised money, it took me like maybe 6 months, full-time job, talking to people, doing emails. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. Indeed, you should never be discouraged at any point. Randy, did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I was just going to add to that. I was in a room with a few, I think it was about, with a few founders, early stage founders. And one of the things that they were saying was that in the beginning, when you're pitching to investors, one of the things that, just as Alejandro just said, you have to be prepared to hear no a lot. But also I think one of the advice that they gave was that to be very intentional about the investors that you pitch your business to, and even if possible to maybe make a list, from like your preferred kind of investor partner to your least preferred, and then to start from your least preferred, and kind of work your way from the bottom up, so that by the time you're pitching to your preferred investor, you've refined your idea, you've gone through the process several times. But yeah, they did say that you're going to have to pitch it hundreds and hundreds of times. So I guess that's kind of part of the process.
Yes, and also another idea come to mind that was that an investor doesn't have just like one investment; they have a whole portfolio. So you should also try to look for people that are already invest on something similar to that area. So you already know, because investor the way they think is like, okay, maybe this idea won't work, but I will invest in other three or five to see which one of those works. One of those will hit it. So they actually one investor invest in many similar ideas. So you can try to look for maybe your competition, or not your competition, but kind of the same field, and they're good. They're probably are very interested in what you have to offer him.
I love it. You guys pinpointed some amazing things. I just wanted to thank you guys for coming on stage and asking questions. And Faisal, thank you so much for participating to this topic. I really enjoyed it. We have recorded this room. I hope it's okay with everyone, because it's going to be published in the IBD Hub podcast that is available on Spotify and Apple Podcast, and also on YouTube, so you can find it. And it's my podcast, and it's about business and architecture and innovation. So if you're interested to hear more, please go ahead. Faisal, can you tell us where people can find you as well, and where to connect?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm on here most often. I'm on Clubhouse almost every day. But apart from here, you can find me on my Instagram at Faisal U-K _. If you're in the audience, it's in my bio on here. Or if you're listening in, it's at Faisal U-K _. And if you'd like to know more about ILLUSORR, you can check us out on Instagram as well, at ILLUSORR, ILLUSORR. Or you can check out our website, illusorr.com. And this was great, Giulia. Thank you so much for inviting me. And Randy and Alejandro, always great hearing from you guys. So thank you so much.